everybody. Just so you're aware, I'm Adam Olivero. This is my wife, Jen Olivero, and our daughter, Claire Olivero. I'm the chair of the Affirm Committee at Grace United Church in Hanover, Ontario. And welcome to Pi Day. This is exciting. Woohoo! All right, we've got lots of things planned for Pi Day, so let's not delay in getting things started here. So as I mentioned, we are recording this meeting. If for some reason you do not want to appear on camera or have your voice recorded, that's more than fine. You're welcome to stay here and listen. You're welcome to participate if you want to. We have a few different ways that we could do that without you appearing on camera. I'll just move this. I brought up the chat on my end so I can see. Okay, so what you can do if you do not want to appear on camera at all is mute your camera and your mic. It's totally up to you. What we'll be doing when we have 5 speakers to speak today, and what they'll be doing when they're speaking, I'll make them full screen on my end. On your end, it's up to you on how you view, whether you want to view by the speaker full screen or a gallery view. And you can do that at the top right-hand corner of your screen if you're on a computer. And I think you have to tap the screen and then hit switch your view if you're on a tablet or a phone.
You have to press twice.
Yeah, you have to press it twice, Claire says, to bring the options up and then press it. The other thing you could do if you don't want to have your voice recorded or have yourself on camera during the recording, and you have a question, you can use the chat box at the bottom to certainly chat the message to us. There will be a time after the speakers are done speaking to have an open discussion and have questions or opinions expressed. We're all for that. We would be happy to have a discussion later on after we've all had our speakers speak. But again, you could either come on camera with your voice and your camera to do that, or you can go through the chat box. It's totally up to you. I did want to let you know that if you do put a message in the chat box, that is also recorded as well too. So just so you're aware that if you do put a message in the chat box, that would be recorded as well in a text file, but just to make you aware. So, as I said, I'm Adam Olivero from Grace United Church in Hanover, Ontario. I'm the chair of the Affirming Committee, and I'm also the chair of the Ministry and Personnel Committee at Grace United Church too. So as I went through the participants there and how to participate, but first, before we get started, I did want to acknowledge the traditional territory that we are on. The 3 of us here are in Hanover, Ontario. I don't know where we have people coming from all over southwestern Ontario today. But for us and where Grace United Church is located, we are on Saugeen Ojibwe territory. And for thousands of years, the First Nations people have walked on this land. Their relationship with the land is at the center of their lives and spirituality. As we worship or discern today in the Pi Day, we recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and Anishinaabe people, and the Métis people as well. And we pray that God may lead us in working towards right relationships. Okay. So, I did want to get back to myself before I introduce the speakers that we have and talk to you slightly about my affirming process and my own journey. So I grew up in a small town of Greenbank, Ontario. If you're familiar with the area around Hanover, the comparable would be Neustadt. Neustadt is about the same size as Greenbank, although Neustadt actually has more amenities than Greenbank. Our main focal points in Greenbank were a bakery, a gas station with a beautiful Japanese restaurant, if you're ever in the area, and a United Church.
Now there's a church in the restaurant.
Yeah, now there's just the church and the restaurant. So that's where I grew up, in a very, very small town. I went to school with people who openly identified as gay and lesbian, and I never thought anything of it. It wasn't strange or unusual to me. I just grew up with them. So I didn't think too much of that and went off to college in Ottawa, where one of our speakers actually also went to college at Algonquin College. We'll talk to Jeff in a little bit. And I never thought anything of that until about in October of 2009. One of my friends from high school, Chris, who I'd actually kind of lost touch with, in October of 2009, he was at a nightclub in Toronto. Unfortunately, Chris Skinner was brutally attacked and beaten and then killed outside that nightclub. And Chris was gay and openly gay. And he was just targeted for that reason, just that he was gay. And Chris was only 27 years old at that time and taken too quickly. It was a senseless act. As I mentioned, Chris was gay and more than accepted at Port Perry High School, where I went to school in the late 90s. We liked, and even, he was openly gay. We all liked him. He was even student body president at some points for, I think, a year or two. So that really made me question why that happened, and kind of started me on my path to becoming a person of justice and inclusion for all. Claire's a little of a social justice warrior beside us here too. So then about 3 years ago, I had discovered the Affirm United and the Living Apology Project. And we had the Living Apology Project come to our church and do a session with us. And that was beautiful. We had, I think, 20 or 30 people there as well. And so that started my journey and Grace United's journey of discernment and discovery for the affirming process. And as an Affirm committee of Grace United Church, we are working towards that part of the pie. So where are we as Grace United Church? If you'll bear with me for a couple more minutes, I'll just go through a few quick things about where we are right now for Grace United. So far we have updated our church's marriage policy to allow all gender combinations or sexual orientations the option to be married at Grace United in our church or outside of our church with the service of our minister, McCall. We've also updated Grace's mission statement as well to include all combinations of gender and sexual orientations that are free to worship at our church, attend our church functions, become full members of the church, and participate on the church board or on committees as well too. So in that spirit of PIE, right, we all know that PIE stands for public, intentional, and explicit showing of the affirming words. And in support of my allyship, I got a special thing I'm wearing here. Let's take my hoodie off. It is a pride jumper. Apologize if my arm is stuck here.
I am wearing these, but mine is
And there we go. And Jen's got her pride colors on, and Claire has her pride ones on too.
I'm going through growth spurt.
Yep. So I just want to take a few more things. So what, as we said, Pi Day is public, intentional, and explicit. And what is Affirm United and Pi Day all about? Well, most would say it's about being welcoming to your church and welcoming all people to your church and Pi. But why do we need to be public and intentional and explicitly state that? Some people may say, well, the United Church has always been welcoming. Yes and no. Yes, it might seem like we've been welcoming. No, we haven't in the past. The United Church of Canada has a complicated past, and like most organizations, they did what they thought was right at the time with the information they had, but now we know that that was so wrong. There was the treatment of First Nations groups in residential schools that were run by the United Church of Canada, rejection of people based on their gender, skin color, sexual orientation, race, or ethnicity. But I feel, and I think these two would agree with me, that at this point, the United Church of Canada and Grace United Church here in Hanover recognizes this past and openly discusses the past. And they want to work towards a more inclusive future together with our friends in the LGBTQ2SIA+, that's lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, two-spirit, intersex, asexual, and plus community. And we can't also forget about our friends in the BIPOC community as well, the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community. So hopefully we can work together with all these groups to become more inclusive and open as a church family and as a community of Hanover and the wider Ontario and world. So thank you for listening for me to rambling on for a little bit and the story of Grace United. And today we're going to have some speakers and we'll continue our journey. So we have 5 people that are going to speak with us today, as I mentioned. We have the Reverend Jeffrey Dale from the Shining Waterways Regional Council. We also have, I hope, Matthiel, I'm getting this right, Matthiel Wilson from Pine River United Church. And we have Ruth McWhirter from the Port Nelson United Church Affirming Committee. And then we also have Liz Dillman from the Kincardine United Church, too. And Gord Dunbar, the Reverend Gord Dunbar from Kincardine, is also here as well, too. So, having said all that, and Claire's already diving into her pie. So if you have your pie and you've been waiting, don't let me stop you. Feel free to keep your mic muted and enjoy your pie as you listen to these stories.
I'm hungry, okay?
And the first person we're going to have speak is Jeffrey Dale. And also, before I let you get on here, Jeffrey, the exciting news is I hear that the Shining Waterways Council is celebrating becoming an Affirming Regional Council now, too. Jeffrey, did you want to unmute yourself? And
Sure, great. Thank you, Adam.
no problem.
Everyone, usually I have a nice sort of light on my face, but I'm a little bit in dark because I was just preaching at a church up in Barrie. I live in Toronto, and so we just finished worship service at 11:45, and I'm in their office doing this. So this is not how I live with my life, with all of this disorganized sort of stuff behind me. It's how, and I can say that about this church because I used to work here, so I can say that honestly. Well, it's my pleasure to be with you. I love Hanover. It might seem shocking that a person from Toronto knows where Hanover is, but I actually own property up at Erin Lake, which is just north of Hanover. Some of you are shaking your head. Erin Lake. And so when I go from my parents' house in a place called Milverton, which some of you might know, I don't know if anybody knows Milverton, but when I go from their house up to my property at Erin Lake, I drive through Hanover, and I must admit, usually that's the place we stop at the LCBO. So I know your LCBO very well, which I don't know if that's a thing I should admit on a church meeting or not, but it is what I know a great deal about Hanover. So this is the Rainbow Crosswalk, actually, that Grace United Church, the office that I'm in. Last summer, their youth and their parents painted it outside of the church. So for 6 years, Grace in Barrie has been an affirming ministry. And as I was preparing for my end time with the congregation, one of the youth had an idea that they would like to do this. So we got approval through the church board, and then I admitted to them that it was happening the very next day. So I was kind of glad they gave approval. And this is the newspaper article that was shared in the city of Barrie. And this was sort of a big deal because one of the reasons why I wanted to share it was not only did over 50,000 people across the country see this image, we also had to learn a little bit about our own community and our own community's engagement. So as I had said before, Barrie was, Grace United in Barrie was 5 years at that time they had been affirming. And when we painted this and it was approved by the board, there was people at the congregation that were upset that it had been painted, that the whole congregation hadn't been consulted. And one of the reasons why they were upset was because they also had, I should say at the time, a Korean Presbyterian church here. And that Korean Presbyterian church had always struggled with them being an affirming congregation. And so what happened was in the last few months that I was with Grace was they actually had to reconsider what their mission was as an affirming church. And one of the things that they recognized was that by painting this crosswalk, they were being public. They were allowing the public around them in Barrie, but also the wider public to know that they were an affirming church. And so that first recognition really helped them understand and frame that this was an important aspect of their communal experience. Then the next part was we talked about the intentionality and why that matters sorry, my dog is also beside me. That's who's shaking. It's not me, if you wonder. They also had to realize that by painting this, they were intentional, that the work that they had done with local social service organizations and local pride organizations was being explicitly, publicly, intentionally shared. And then the explicit part came, and this is probably, I think, the most difficult part for congregations because it is actually where you have to consider and reconsider the theology behind why you want to be an affirming church. So socially, like Adam sort of said, socially, we've came to a place in our society where people from queer backgrounds, sexual orientation and gender identity backgrounds have become more supported in the social sphere, but often we don't understand why we do that theologically. So one of the things that this church had to consider was, where in the Bible does it actually tell them about their relationship with each other? And so they really went into the Bible quite deeply, which is not something we often hear in United Churches, right? Like, I'll be honest. It's not something that we do very well in our church, is actually reconsider our relationship with what biblically we are being told. And so one of the pieces that really stuck out for them was from the Psalms, where it's talked about you are fearfully and wonderfully made by God. And we really sort of examined what it meant to be a wonderfully made and a fearfully made person. And one of the reasons why I share all this with you is because I am here now, and I can tell you almost a year later, the crosswalk is still there. And if anything, even through those moments of having to reconsider and reaffirm themselves as an affirming ministry, this crosswalk and this sort of intentionality has helped them really see the purpose behind why they are an affirming church. They have started to really see why it matters to be an affirming church. And Barrie is a larger city. I usually compare it to Kitchener. And so it's a little bit different. When I spoke with Pine River, who I know you said are also on here, you're both in such unique situations. So I grew up in Milverton, which is a town of, I think it's up to 1,700 people. I don't know the exact number, but when I was a kid, it was 1,200. I didn't see people like me in our community. And in fact, I grew up at a time when people like me were being told that we would die of HIV/AIDS. And so I grew up in a small community that didn't really see who I was. And I think a lot about that. And I think a lot about how even today we still have those struggles. And so as you work through this, consider for yourselves, you are doing this as part of a wider United Church call within Affirm United, but really ground yourselves in the reality that you are becoming affirming for you and for your local community. And you're working towards something that you will someday, somewhere, somehow see just how much it does matter to young people in your community. After that Rainbow Crosswalk was painted, it was young people from all over Barrie that contacted me and said, thank you. And so as you walk through this time, it can sometimes feel a little bit daunting. And sometimes it also, I've found with congregations, it can feel a little silly to become affirming, like probably for the reasons Adam said. But you remind yourself that each and every day you are reaffirming what it means to be an affirming ministry. So I'm going to leave it at that because I probably have talked for far too long. But thank you so much for having me with you today.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. And if I'm right in saying this, you were in the theater program at Algonquin College when I was in the TV broadcasting program at Algonquin College. And Jen beside me was in the dental hygiene program at Algonquin College, all at the same time.
Yeah.
Tanny and Julia say hi.
Oh, perfect.
And thank you for sharing. That's a wonderful story to hear how the sidewalk impacted the community in Barrie. We were actually, Jen and I think Claire was there too in Coburg, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we were in Coburg, Ontario in 2019. Was it just last 2 years ago?
2019.
And we happened to be there for a town crying event, and they were painting a sidewalk in the rainbow colors, which is pretty cool to see. Oh, it was a crosswalk, actually.
Crosswalk,
a crosswalk in rainbow
downtown.
colors, yeah. So that was really nice to see too. Well, thank you for your time, Jeff. And I think, if I'm right in saying this, that the Shining Waters has their celebration at 2 p.m. today for becoming...
Yeah, 2 p.m. So I will sneak off a little bit early because I am the one presiding at the... but we also have the Reverend Michael Blair as our guest speaker.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Well, if we do get wrapped up in time, can they go to the Shining Waters website for the links on how to join if people do?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat because I have no idea where to direct people to anything. I'm
okay.
We have tech people.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Jeffrey. And it's good to see you even virtually. Alrighty, so coming up next then, and thank you, Jeffrey, for those thoughts, leaving us with those thoughts to think about as we go through this process. So, and if you're just wondering why I keep glancing this way, I have two monitors here with the agenda on one monitor. So the next person we have up is Matthiel Wilson of Pine River United. And Matthiel, I hope I'm saying that correct. I should have asked when we were talking how to pronounce your name. Am I correct?
That's okay. It's Matthiel Wilson.
Matthiel Wilson. Okay.
Yes. I inherited my mother's name.
Beautiful.
Well, when you want to get started, by all means, get started. And I do have that PDF that you'd sent me to share here. And it might just take me a minute to get it going, but let me know when you would like it.
No, it doesn't matter. Thanks. I'm just basically going to go through it anyway. Thanks, Adam, and thank you for the invitation to share our pie recipe. Maybe I should explain where Pine River is. Pine River United Church is in Bruce County. It is actually on Highway 21 in between Kincardine and Amberley, or between Kincardine and Godrich. So we're a little rural community. And actually I was born just about 1.25 miles from there. So I was baptized and married there and everything. So, and moved back home a few years ago when I retired. So I live in Point Clark, near the lake. I'd like to start off by giving honorable mention to two chefs, Reverend Vicki Johnson and Thomas Johnson, were part of our team since the seed was planted back in the fall of 2017. Last October, they moved on after 8 years at Pine River. I'm gonna get choked up. Other chefs, some who may be with us today, have also been part of the team since the beginning. Betty Jones, Jill Rasica, Joyce Ellis, and Bob Hargrave. I think Betty and Bob are with us this afternoon. After our invite, our team met via Zoom the other day, and this is the recipe we'd like to share with you. These are the most palatable ingredients. And Adam almost already mentioned this, and Jeff, of course, too. So a lot of cups, 3 cups of publicly expressing who specifically is welcome, as stated in our vision statement and marriage policy. 1 cup of inclusion, 1 cup of continued education and growth, 1 cup of fellowship, 1 cup of sharing, 1 cup of creating a safe place for all, and 4 cups of teamwork and perseverance. When the cooks in the kitchen at Pine River mixed it all together, we baked up an almost perfect pie. There was and still is the worry of it being either undercooked or overcooked. Then there was the big cook-off. How was it mixed? Workshops with food, of course, guest speakers, movies, storytelling circles, wheelchair accessible pews, affirming moments, both verbal and written, supportive sermons by Reverend Vicki Johnson. We participated in out-of-church activities, and thanks goes to Grace United, Kincardine United, Huron Shores United, and then, of course, the Pride Parade in Kincardine, Affirm United Kitchen Sink Series, and And needless to say, the support of Linda Hutchison and her team at Affirm United. Because the temperature was right, we put it in the oven. Next, the big taste test. In September, we had the congregational vote, which was held at the Point Clark Picnic Shelter because of COVID. And then the celebration via Zoom on September the 28th. And thanks to Jeff for your inspiring keynote speech. We're mixing up more of the same recipe, but at a slower speed. We have oodles of great cooks at Pine River, and we were asking for some of those cooks to volunteer to join the Affirming team. COVID care at Pine River, letters, gifts delivered to the church members' doors. We're promoting the Affirming logo on our website, Facebook page, church digital sign, letterhead, displaying symbols and signs of inclusion on our church door. For example, hearing assistance, device scent free, wheelchair accessibility, breastfeeding friendly, LGBTQ2. And we hope to be able to support the Kincardine Pride this year again, supporting other congregations on their journey like yourselves. We have most supportive worship leaders, Trish McGregor and Doug Kaufman at the moment. I think Doug's with us today. And now we are mixing up more of the same ingredients. How does our pie taste at Pine River's Country Kitchen? Notice it's country. Delicious. Looks like the recipe is a keeper. Remembering, practice makes perfect. We'll keep repeating the recipe. Enjoy your pie. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you. I enjoyed my pie, and it looks like my other people here did too. The pies, our slices are all gone. Oh, I see. Now that you're done with your part, you're going to enjoy the pie, right?
I just need the ice cream too. I can't eat this without ice cream. I'll wait.
Right on. Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing, Pine River's story there. Appreciate that. Okay. Then next, we are going to actually travel all the way down to I think, if I'm right, Ruth, if you want to unmute yourself, Ruth McWhirter, I hope I'm saying that last name right. I think at Port Nelson's, is it in the Horseshoe Valley? Am I right saying that?
Yes, in Horseshoe. Well, it's in Burlington.
Oh yeah, okay. So
yes,
close.
So it's in the Horseshoe Falls region of the United Church, but it's in Burlington. So
right on.
Yeah. And I wanted to first of all, thank you for asking me to join you, but I wanted to say hi to Gord Dunbar, because Gord was on our ministerial staff at Port Nelson United Church when we were going through our whole affirming journey. And when I first saw him on the little small square, I didn't recognize him because he's now in a full beard, which I don't know if that's pandemic related, or I don't necessarily think so, but it's wonderful to see Gord again. We began our formal study in the fall of 2016 for becoming an affirming congregation, and it was part of a long journey that we've had. And if you wanted to hear and see our service, pie service today, it's on YouTube for Port Nelson United Church. And our minister, Michael Brooks, takes you right through our journey from the marriage policy right through to the current day. But we decided as a group and as a church that we would have a very broad definition of affirming. And I just thought I'd just begin by reading it to you. And it became the affirming statement that is on our website. When we have our YouTube live stream each week, it is right there. And it's also something that is read frequently in our services. And that when we have baptism or people joining the church, they need to say that they are in line with this statement. And so I'm just going to read it to you, because as you are doing it, I think it's a very inclusive, affirming statement. We affirm, include, and celebrate people of every age, race, belief, culture, ability, income level, family configuration, gender identity, and sexual orientation in the life and ministry of Port Nelson. As followers of Jesus, we believe that we are part of the body of Christ. The Apostle Paul said that the body does not consist of one member, but of many, and all are indispensable. And so our work has been far-ranging, and part of that is because of the many interests on our committee. People have a variety of interests in social justice, but very much certainly beginning with the focus of Affirm United and the help that they gave us. And so in terms of public, we certainly do many of the things that everybody has been talking about, although we don't have a Rainbow Crosswalk. That's interesting. But in terms of signage, we have a banner that shows for the street from one of our windows. It's a full-length banner for a long window. And of course, on our web page, we have the Affirm logo. The Affirm statement is at either entrance. And we had a large rebuilding and renovation in the last couple of years. And the committee doing that really worked with us in trying to make sure that the Affirm nature became visible. And so all of this signage was very carefully planned, and also in collaboration with the Positive Space Network, an LGBTQ plus group in the area. They looked at our washrooms and gave us some advice in that area. So on each floor, we have a washroom for everyone, and as well as gender-specific washrooms. And so that's an ongoing thing to be public, but in terms of intentional, it's not a matter, we found, of just saying, well, we took our vote and that's it, and we're an affirming congregation, but that it's ongoing. And also that there have been bumps along the way in becoming an affirming congregation. And at one of our critical junctures, we were concerned, and yet we didn't want to give up. And so for our committee, we had this mug made that says, with a rainbow, and it says, "Nevertheless, we persist." And you'll probably recognize that from a couple of years ago in the United States, the relevance of that. And Gord, everyone on the committee and the ministers and so forth were given one of these, and I'm hoping, Gord, that you still have yours. But we have done a lot of work as a committee, a meeting every month, looking at plans for studying ourselves, becoming more familiar with different social justice issues, looking at how we can be inclusive to everybody who comes to our congregation, and how we can educate one another. And so we did a fair bit of work actually with Six Nations on the Grand, and with their Six Nations Polytechnic, and had a year or so ago a full weekend of work with them. And that went very, very well. And as a result of that, we learned from them that one of their great needs was support for their Indigenous languages program, and how the loss of language, of native languages through the residential schools had such an impact on their spirituality and their culture. And because they identified that as a need, we then, after that, had a fundraising campaign, and we were able to raise enough money so that for the next 5 years, we're able to provide them with $1,000 a year to support students in their Indigenous languages program. And we also learned of the difficulty of First Nations communities across the country with clean water. And we have now we're going through a process of a letter writing campaign and trying to spread that as well. And we each June we have an anniversary service, and we try to have a speaker who's going to be informing us further. This June we're having Reverend Junia Joplin, who was fired last year when she came out during a service as a transgender person in her Baptist church, and she's recently been hired on staff at Metropolitan Community Church in Toronto. We also have in our church a yearly scholarship for young people in the Halton area. So that would include Burlington and Oakville, Milton, Georgetown, and Acton. And for a graduating student who has shown leadership in inclusion. And that's been a wonderful experience being on that adjudication committee. And we are now working in collaboration with the Positive Space Network, which is an LGBTQ plus group that supports young people in Halton and their parents. And our endowment fund, we had, in each case, we have to apply for this, but we gave them some money to support their work. And in small things as well, income disparity is something that I think is a hidden barrier in some churches. And our church presents itself as a fairly prosperous church in the heart of Burlington, which is a fairly prosperous community. And yet we knew that sometimes there are members in the church who don't feel that it's possible for them to pay $50 for the church gala or for a particular event. And so what we have taken through council is a motion that when there is a non-fundraising event anyway, that we have it advertised as the suggested fee, but also pay as you can. And that was a lot of that is being intentional, thinking about what the barriers might be and trying to be as respectful as possible in that. Yesterday, we worked with Applewood United Church in Mississauga and St. Paul's in Oakville, both of them being affirming congregations, for a pie celebration Saturday morning. And our guest speaker was Reverend Michael Blair. So he's busy this weekend, I can tell. And he's General Secretary of General Council. And he had a wonderful presentation. And one of the things that I took so many notes, but he said, what is our appetite for change? And that each congregation is at a different spot, and that some congregations will jump in and embrace all sorts of forms of diversity, and others will be more focused, but that to start where you are. And one of my colleagues at work teaches a course on diversity and inclusion and equity, and she begins her classes with her students, who again come from all different backgrounds, and she says, begin where you are, but don't stay there. And so we're constantly thinking about how we can be more inclusive, and we realize that there are lots of times when we are not. And so it's not as though it's a finished process, it's a journey, but it's certainly something that has been very rich. And if that's and I think that is the journey you're on, it's a great road to go down. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And that's wonderful to hear that you're reaching out and including all in your community in all kinds of different ways. That's amazing. Great work over there. Thank you. And then, so we've been, if we were traveling by car, Jen, we would be going the wrong way, because we started here in Hanover and then we went to Toronto to see Jeff. And then we went.
He was in Barrie.
Oh, he was in Barrie. Okay. Barrie. So we went to Barrie to see Jeff. And then we went to see Matthiel in Pine River, which is like the other way, that way for us. And then we went down to Burlington, and now we're coming back to Kincardine. So like, I laid us out wrong.
I think it'd be easier to do what the Muppets do and just travel by map.
Well, I think that's what we're doing today, so that's a lot easier to travel by map. Good point.
Sorry, Adam, to interrupt. It's Lynn Heffernan. Can I just ask Ruth a quick question?
Sure.
Is Is Lowville United Church still practicing?
I don't know. I know exactly where the church is.
Oh, I grew up in that church. I just wondered if
I'm
if you
not
would know.
sure about that. I wish I could answer that, but I'm not
Okay.
sure. So.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
It's part of a cluster of 5 churches on the north end of Burlington.
Yeah, it's in Lowville on the Guelph line. I grew up in that church and it was beautiful. I just wondered. Thank you.
Thanks,
No problem, Lynn. So then, as we were saying, we've kind of traveled all over southwestern Ontario, and we're coming back to Kincardine now to talk with Liz Dillman of Kincardine United Church. Liz, you're here. I see you. Where are you? There you are. You're down at the bottom. Bottom of my screen, at least.
We're all over the place, right?
Yep.
First of all, thank you very much, Adam, for letting us know about this and inviting us to participate. As you said, Gord Dunbar is also here today. He says he'll just listen, but those of you who've had Gord around as your minister know that let's just see if that mute button stays on. But I've also told him he can jump in anytime he wants to. So anyway, Kincardine United Church began its journey back in May of 2019, and it ended up being suspended in March of 2020 when COVID shut down everything. So we had learned about the affirming process at the regional meeting in, it might have been 2018 or later, but anyway, that kind of was our impetus to get going and to see about making this process happen for Kincardine United Church. We had a committee of 14, including 3 students who they're not necessarily away right now attending university, but they have gone on to theirs. So the impetus behind this was to help our congregation understand that everyone should be welcome in our church. We want to make sure everyone feels welcome and no one feels unwelcome. We want the church to be a church that fulfills Christ's vision to love all. And although Affirm's focus is on the LGBTQ2SIA+ community, we also want people to understand that race, ethnicity, income levels, all of those kinds of things that affect how a person lives their life and they also have to be made to feel welcome. So put simply, becoming an affirming church is really the right thing to be doing. In 2018, we did create an inclusive marriage policy, but we worded it in such a way, because we had to take it to the congregation for congregational approval, we worded it in such a way that I like to call it wishy-washy. It's worded very loosely with no specifics towards anybody's sexuality or anything like that. And we did it on purpose that way so that we could get it through the congregation without raising the debate about homosexuality and all the other things that we knew would come up if we were very specific in it. So I think a lot of the congregation understood for sure what we were doing, but we never specifically came out and said it. So we kind of backdoored our policy, but it passed without any problem. So, we did it that way. Within the congregation, there are several, and probably many, who feel that the church believes itself to be a welcoming church, but it's not always that. We can talk the talk, but we don't always walk the walk. Things like people sitting in their usual spots, they don't always talk to first-timers, especially if they are different than we are. We are an established congregation with many long-time members. It's also an aging congregation, and it doesn't always realize that some of the things that we do and say are not welcoming at all to people coming through our doors. We realize that not only can race, age, in our case, younger people, gender and sexual orientation be a barrier for us, but we also have barriers for those with disabilities. It seemed in some ways easier for us to start with the barriers for those with disabilities. Several years ago, we added a ramp for access to the chancel area. We have the hearing assist devices for those who are hard of hearing, and we removed several sections of pews to allow for space for wheelchairs, walkers, and strollers in the middle of the sanctuary so that these people were no longer relegated to the back of the church where there was space. In the past, for example, when the ramp went in, the discussion of shortening pews or moving pews was more of an issue than the ramp itself. When it became time to remove the pews for the wheelchairs, etc., council approved it and people just did it. And then we sat back and waited for the comments. And there were many. Mostly negative at first. And interestingly, some of them actually came from people who use walkers, complaining about these holes in the middle of the seating of the pews. We just kept explaining the need for everyone to feel welcome and to be a part of the congregation. People have become used to the spaces now, and they no longer seem bothered by the removal of the pews. Of course, they haven't been there for a year, so who knows? We also put a name tag program in place so that people could order name tags for $5. Membership Admission Committee paid the difference in the cost of those to keep the cost down for our people. This has proved very successful and is much more welcoming, not only for newcomers, but for some of us old timers who don't always remember names. We decided to start our LGBTQ2S1A+ journey with providing the congregation on information on what the Bible actually says about homosexuality. We used the 4 pamphlets from Soul Force Inc., What the Bible Says and Doesn't Say about homosexuality. We had our greeters hand out one of the pamphlets each week for 4 weeks, and we had a member of the committee speak each week about the committee's work and what the pamphlets were saying. These pamphlets seemed to be well received, and the extra copies left at the back were picked up. We are also participants and supporters of the Pride Parade, and we also do the Pride Parade Friday night service at Kincardine United Church. And just a note, if you're ever buying a banner to carry in a parade, 15 by 4 is too big, but you sure make a statement with a banner that size. We did a skit, which, well, it didn't go work as well as it should have, mostly due to sound systems and issues with the sound system. People didn't hear it. So we were in the process of getting ready to tape that same skit. It was about a couple, a lesbian couple coming into the church, 3 different churches looking for a church to settle in. So we were planning to tape it, make sure we had good sound and everything else, and then holding a church service in the basement of the church, not in the sanctuary, with tables and questions and mixing up people and just bringing forward the issues that came out of the skit. That was set for early 2020 and it happened because of COVID. So we put ourselves on hiatus mostly because we kept thinking that, we were going to get back to church soon, and that has not happened. So we are going to be starting to meet again and see what we can do working with Gord through our online services. So that's kind of where we're at. But we'll see what happens in that. Gord, have you got anything you want to add to that? Please feel free.
Just the fact that I went to the council back in late 2017, and I said, I'm not asking your permission. I just want to give you a heads up. I'm going to be joining the board of Kincardine Pride. So I want to make sure that we are able to communicate that to the congregation in a way that's helpful and also public and intentional about how I expect that to be a volunteer leadership of my own in the community. So there were some questions and some conversation, and it was a unanimous, you go for it. So apparently I'm the secretary of the board for Kincardine Pride now, and we have marched in the parade ever since 2018. Now, we didn't have a parade in 2020, and it looks like we may not have a parade this year, although we will have a lot of virtual activities and possibly an in-car parade for Pride Day this year. So we'll see. It was that willingness of the leadership of the congregation and the wonderful support of people within the congregation that have enabled me a relatively smooth journey as that in this community.
Great. Thank you, Liz and Gord, for sharing that with us. And your journey continues for sure. And that's excellent to hear. Yeah. Jen's clapping beside me. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody else who shared stories. To Jeffrey, unfortunately, has left. He had to go MC his own Shining Waters celebrations. But Jeffrey, thank you for sharing. And Matthiel, thank you for sharing yours as well. And Ruth, thank you for sharing from Port Nelson United Church. And Liz and Gord from Kincardine United, thank you so much for sharing. So now's the time. We could either be here for a little while. I've got time. You've got time for questions, concerns, comments. You can either feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm watching that on my other screen over here. Or let me know. Just you can unmute yourself and let me know if you want to speak. Just for myself, I really appreciated the speakers coming and talking and giving their perspectives and what they're doing as well in their own churches and councils and things that we can take away too at Grace United Church. So I really appreciate everybody for coming. Oh, Jen has something she wants to say.
You guys haven't seen just how fabulous Adam's outfit really is. I'm going to have him step out into the hallway and take off his jeans so you can see just how amazing this outfit is. The fabulous Catherine Dankel found it for Adam. I think it was at a Value Village and gave it to him, and we haven't had a chance, unfortunately, to wear it to Pride Parade, but there he is in all his bony-kneed glory. So we're really hoping 2022 maybe we're gonna get him dressed up. We've got leg warmers and arm warmers like these too, and head to Pride Parade. It's going to Pride Parade if you haven't gone is one of the most uplifting things that we have done. The sense of community and belonging is absolutely wonderful, and it is just an absolute love fest. It really truly is, to see the community coming out in full force, wide ranges of ages and families and abilities, and we're just out there celebrating love and affirming and belonging and community. By the time I'm done the Pride Parade, I have danced the whole time. Anybody that's gone with us can attest to that. And my adrenaline level is about up here, and I'm buzzing for days off of it. But yeah, it's really fabulous. So I'm really hoping that 2022 we can hit up Pride Parade, and that I will make sure that Adam can get into this outfit in 2022 as well. COVID. So we'll get working on that and get him into that. But yeah, thanks very much.
And don't let Adam tell you it's only 2 blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more like 7. It's not 2 blocks.
It's not 2 blocks.
And the first time we went as Grace United Church, so Gord and Liz and Judy know, that was when the construction was happening on the main street, and it was actually shorter than it is now.
Oh dear.
I still danced the whole time.
Yes, she did.
I think it's worth noting too that when we've been there, the appreciation on people's faces when they see churches walking in it too is really something, because there are a lot of people whose experience of church is not one of welcoming. So when they see banners that say Grace United and Kincardine United and Pine River United Church and the Presbyterian minister out there waving, the number of people who smiled and clapped extra loud when we went by was very heartening to see, and a reminder for me of why this work's important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree with that for sure. Yeah, we saw lots of faces when we went with the church banner.
Yes, and update, we found an amazing Bluetooth speaker with flashy lights for $20, and it works, and the volume's super loud. So we're already planning for 2022. My playlist has gotten longer and bigger, and I am expecting to see more faces this time. If we have to get a trailer to put people on there that can't dance for $5, that's fine. I will pull it personally. Don't hold me to that though. But I will pay for a trailer for more people to come, so that we can have a good time and party and celebrate love and affirming in community.
It's Gord Dunbar, if I may, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I would add about the Pride Parade in Kincardine, which is a bit of a counterpoint to what's being said, is when I first marched in Pride up here in Kincardine, because I hadn't arrived in Kincardine officially until July 1st of 2017, after the second Pride Parade. But when I was marching in 2018, there was a gentleman on the sidewalk who came up to us, saw our ginormous banner, and said, "What are you guys from, the United Church?" And we said, "Yep." And then he said, "Well, F you, United Church, because you're going to hell." And a very wise member of our congregation, who is virtually not much taller than the sign it was, I said to him, "And we love you too." And that to me is what's public, intentional, and explicit about the message that we're trying to get across. He hasn't come back. I'm sure he's still in the community, but the reaction of the crowd around was one of gracious disdain, if you will, for that gentleman, and vocal and loud support of the response of the wise member of the congregation, because I was ready to spit. But anyway.
Oh boy, you do have a very wise member, yes. Go ahead.
I was just going to add to Gord's, we were in that same parade and we had the same thing happen to us, correct?
And us as well.
I probably had the tunes going too loud in my head. I didn't hear a thing. Which was probably a good idea, or Adam would have been holding me back.
Was there anybody else present? Questions, comments? By all means, you're more than welcome to speak or throw a message up in the chat.
Adam, why do you think our congregation is so reluctant?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I think part of that may have to do with some people's own personal journeys too, and their own fears and insecurities with being associated with particularly the LGBTQ2A plus groups out there. I know one of the comments that we heard at I think it was the first affirming meeting that we had in the gym was, are we going to be, that gay church? So I think a lot of it has to do with people's personal journeys, kind of thing. And as they work on that, I would really, really hope that we are growing as a congregation and as individuals to realize that to really live Christ's words means that we grow and we change and we become an affirming congregation in every sense of it.
Did you want to be the chair of the committee?
No.
No.
Thank you, Lynn.
Did anybody else have any comments or questions?
I know for most of us, this would have been done already. But there is a small group that kind of have dug their heels in. And hopefully through education, we can get rid of that ignorance. And that's really what it is. Ignorance is a lack of information, and you combat that through education.
And please don't think that it's only your congregation that is going through that. We faced that as well.
Yeah.
And it was a matter of persistence and patience. Also, I think helping people understand that just saying everybody is welcome is not enough. Yesterday, in the session I was referring to with Michael Blair, people said, when congregations say everybody is welcome, very often what that means for someone who's marginalized is that it's the common denominator that is welcome, and that there are so many ways in which people are not welcome. And it was interesting because this person said, that she went into a congregation as a new person, and she was lesbian and did not indicate that initially. And she said before long, people were saying, "So when are you bringing your husband?" And so there was that sense that if she did not produce a husband, that she was not welcome. So they were being welcoming in the sense of being friendly, but also excluding. And so many of those things are just unspoken, but until it happens. So we faced that as well, a small number. The person leading that did leave the church, but in the long term, we have had a growth in membership, I think, of people who have found it otherwise. So it is a process, it's a journey.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, I feel that a lot of people sometimes can be afraid of that change too. It's like if we start welcoming where we are welcoming, but if it's other people, what is my church going to look like then? It's not going to be the church I grew up with. The world today is not the world that we grew up with. The world 20 years from now will not be the world that Claire is growing up with either. And we need to continually grow with that and make sure that we are walking the walk and talking the talk at the same time. There was that Disney movie, Pocahontas. I hope it doesn't get flagged on YouTube now for this. At the beginning of the song that says, you think the only people who are the people who look and think like you. But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew. And that has really, really stuck with me, obviously, since the 1990s when that movie came out. And I think it just really completely relates to the whole affirming process here that we're going through.
Thank you. And thank you, Ruth, for sharing that too. Liz, did you have something you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I also think sometimes that there are people who will pay lip service to becoming affirming because they want to be seen as agreeing with whatever they think are the important people in the church or with the minister, and then turn around and talk differently when they're not in the church setting in that. And I find that sometimes that can be kind of frustrating, right? Like they'll pass something or they'll do something because they're looking around to see who else is agreeing to it and not really putting their heart into what they're doing, which ends up, I think, undermining some of the things that you want to get done sometimes, because you really don't always have the support that you think you have for doing things.
Yep, I could see that. I could agree with that for sure. Thank you.
I was just wondering about the younger people coming up. I'm just wondering about their attitudes. I think their attitudes are very flexible and open for the most part. I talk to my own children and they say, well, of course we embrace people that have different lifestyles. Why not? And I don't know what other people's impressions are of other generations coming up, their attitudes. I wouldn't mind a little bit of discussion around that. Any sense of that with the younger people?
Well, do you want?
We've heard from Adam and other people. Adam?
Well, you probably have a good idea the people that go to Grace United know our daughter Claire, but she's quite open and she is a warrior too for this sort of thing.
She's a social justice warrior.
Yeah.
I didn't have a hand in that at all, though.
But she's very open to this sort of thing too. It's a thing that we discuss around our dinner table at least once a week, probably. Something comes up about being affirming or being welcoming.
Yeah, and I think some of that is going to come from just the way the different generations are being raised too, and issues that are brought up at home and at schools as well. So, there's more social justice programming and groups and clubs at schools too. So younger people are much more aware of what's going on. Outreach groups at schools as well, and that kind of thing. So I really feel that for us to grow as a congregation and to become affirming too is going to make us look that much more welcoming to younger people, and say, this is a community that I want to be a part of. And I think that's absolutely wonderful.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, Jen. I think it will attract younger people to come to institutions like churches. I mean, churches are supposed to be places of love. We're talking about love here. Yeah. You can't love and bully at the same time. You can't love and hate at the same time. You can't love and judge at the same time. We're going to be places of love and be seen as places of love. We got up at the time.
Yeah, right. And we need to keep our hearts in the right spot too, and become an affirming church with the idea of being an affirming church, not just to attract new people. That is hopefully going to be a benefit of it, but not our goal of this.
Okay, so I know that Catherine Dankel, you have your hand up, and Doug Hoffman as well, and Judy Zarbick. But before the three of you speak, I would like to allow Victoria Hicks, who's a member of our Church of Grace United,
a young person
who could speak to this, and she's actually part of some of the committees that we've been talking about at John Diefenbaker High School, our high school here in Hanover. Victoria, the floor is yours, please.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, as you mentioned, I am sort of a younger member of the church community, and I was also present in JD's GSA program when I went there, when I was a student. And then a little bit more recently, last summer, as a part of my university experience, I put together an internship in which I started my own very small non-for-profit volunteer organization called GSA Online, where I just sort of put together sessions once a week with students from the Grey Bruce area, as well as people from sort of my program in university, and just would talk about educational stuff pertaining to the LGBTQ plus community. So what I've noticed is overwhelmingly the tide changing when it comes to acceptance for the LGBTQ plus community, especially with churches, which was really, really nice to see. And it's really great sort of committee happening at Grace United. But yeah, there is definitely still work to be done when it comes to acceptance and education within the world in general. But I do see that a lot of people, especially my age, are learning and putting an effort into becoming more aware of their own prejudices, which is something that's so important in today's society. So yeah, it's really awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Victoria. Okay, so I'm just going to go in the order that I saw the hands raised, and McCall's helping me out and letting me know. So first, we'll have Catherine Dankel. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I really enjoyed today, and I guess my big thing, I guess I'm answering Willie's question. The people that need the education and the people that are so dead against it, I don't see their faces. And this is the problem, is we try to do it from the pulpit. We try to educate people. When the vote was being taken, people said to our committee, yeah, I'll vote yes, but please, please don't have the flag in the church, or don't have the flag anywhere in the building. And it's like, okay, well, we need to do this if we're going to become an affirming church. So it's the education that, I'm just concerned about, that the people that need the education aren't listening.
Yep, I could agree there. And all we can do is continue to educate, and hopefully they tune in, right? And
Really hope so.
And if they have questions, please ask the questions to our committee. Thank you very much for sharing, Catherine. Doug Kaufman. Doug, you've got the floor there, Mr. Kaufman. Reverend Kaufman. Reverend Kaufman retired? Is that?
Wonder Doug.
Yeah, that's good. Wonder Doug.
Okay, well, I just want to respond to a couple of points, and I guess I have to go back to Bob Blackmore's question about the generations, and my children are in their 40s now, and when we first began discussing the inclusiveness within the congregations, they were saying, okay, for us, what's the issue? What is the issue? Because we work with different gendered people. There's no, so they just couldn't conceive of why there would be resistance in churches. We are so culturally ingrained with the prejudices, the disinformation, of centuries of prejudice. It takes a lot of effort to unlearn, and one has to, you have to, I never know whether to get angry with people or very sympathetic to their situation. I think it's a terrible place for people to be in, where they are so ingrained with fears, with ideas that, false ideas that have been perpetuated, that it just brings out some ugliness. The fear, in states of fear, we just revert, and to unlearn that is a big issue. So I just wanted to say to Grace Church that we will persist, and I think, I just am so proud of the people of the congregation who know what the gospel is, and that it is an inclusive, all welcoming road that we're on because of the gospel. The day will come. We need never to lose hope. It's been, I don't know how long since, I officiated at the first same-gendered marriage here in Grace Church, when we first opened the marriage policy. It's been a long number of years since then.
Doug, it's been 17 years.
Is it only 17?
Yes.
So, we're on the path. Don't lose heart, people. Keep hope. Keep working. We will get there because the gospel demands it of us. There's no option for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes, thank you, Doug. And Judy Zarbrick. Judy, you've been so patient. Thank you so much. You've had your hand up the whole time. Judy, please, the floor is yours. Judy, we can't hear you.
Judy, are you still on mute?
I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Try unmuting her from, I know she's just.
Oh, now she's muted. I'll ask it unmute.
How about that?
There, now we got you.
There.
We can hear you.
I was on the wrong speaker.
Oh, no worries.
So what worries me is when we talk about generations that we start to head into ageism, and we look at saying that the youth are the only ones that are getting this. Well, there's lots of youth that don't get this.
Yeah.
And there's lots of very old people that do get this.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned when we start saying it's generational. I don't believe it is. And I worry that we fall into that trap of thinking the young people all get it, because there's still young people being beaten up by young people. So I would caution that we realize it's personal and it's corporate. And we, by educating the personal, hopefully we'll be able to change the corporate.
Yeah. When we were coming home from Pride Parade in 2019, we still had our large flag attached to the back of our vehicle. And when we stopped at a stoplight here in town, we had somebody yell out of their truck, "You've got to be kidding me." And it was somebody our age who yelled it. So yeah, I completely agree, Judy, that there are people, our age and people in high school today who are still just not understanding that it's just about relationships and love and personal experiences, and yeah, it can be entirely frustrating too. You don't know whether to have sympathy or pity them, and sometimes you just want to give them the glow stick treatment too, where you shake until the light comes on. But we can't do that, unfortunately, for some. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And that's you Paul, about it. Thank you. And thank you, Judy, for sharing your opinion too. And Gord, you have Reverend Dunbar, you have your hand up there. Did you want to have the floor is yours for a bit there, Gord?
Sure. Actually, Adam, if you could mute yourself, we're getting a big echo from you.
Sure.
Oh, there we're better. Just to follow up on what Judy was saying, in 1988, when we had the national debate about whether to allow gays in the pulpit or not, and I'm saying that just because that's the way it was phrased, I remember going to my grandmother's house, and she was 86 at the time, and I got to talking with her about it because I was disappointed that my parents didn't want to sign the petition that I had written with a friend of mine to support the report that was going in support of, as we said in those days, gays in the pulpit. And she just looked at me and she said, you're right. I don't understand. If people love somebody, why not let them love somebody? This is my 86-year-old grandmother in 1988 who was born in 1902. So I think that if we use our wise elders, regardless of their age, as storytellers, that we can make a big difference.
It helps if I unmute myself. Yeah, I would agree, Gord. Absolutely. Yeah, and telling those stories is like your story with your mother is a great example of that. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak or had a question or concern? Raise your hand. I should have explained how the raise your hand thing works if you haven't been on a Zoom call. Well, we celebrated 1 year of the pandemic today. I don't know if there's many people that haven't done at least 5 minutes of a Zoom call at some point over the past year.
5 way too many minutes.
5 way too many minutes.
Adam, I'd like to just say that it hasn't been an entire bed of roses at Pine River either, just so you know that. I know even at our official board, when we took the, what was it? The action plan, I believe, correct, Bob? Our action plan, that was sort of the last thing that we had to get passed through our official board. It took a lot of personal stories, which I'm not going to share because we're being recorded, but it did mean a lot. to our committee members. And other people who were part of the official board shared their personal stories too. So I think some of those people who were dragging their feet heard us. Sure, there are those people who haven't and will continue not to hear us. And we did, as an affirming team, decide it was time to move forward and have the vote and see what happens. Because it was even hard to have a real pulse on the whole thing. I'll say no more.
No, thank you. Well, I'd agree. We had an interesting story at Grace United when we decided to go ahead and have our vote, and we had 2 votes. One, the marriage policy was already just voted on by the church official board and passed unanimously to modify the marriage policy. But our mission statement was, and the becoming an affirming church was was voted on by the whole congregation in a congregational meeting. We passed the mission statement and we lost the vote to become an affirming church. Catherine Dankel probably remembers for sure, but I think we lost by 3 or 4 votes to become an affirming church at that point. And that was in 2019, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're still working through that process too. We have that one last vote to go to become an affirming church.
Yeah.
Was there... Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I think what the most frustrating part of our vote to become an affirming church was you were greeting that day at the door, and there was people coming on that Sunday that we had never met.
Yeah.
And we had been attending Grace United for 8 years at that point, and we had never met any of these congregational members, but they were church members, and as such they were allowed a vote. So they were coming with, I don't know what kind of information ahead of time, or where they had received their information, and making a vote. And I think that was what was very entirely frustrating. I'm not going to name names or anything, but that was a very frustrating moment when we're sitting there and we kind of realized that maybe the cards were stacked against us, and it just seemed that much more, heart up in your throat of a moment, waiting for that vote.
I could share another quick story unless... Oh, sorry, Pat. Go ahead, Pat. You go ahead. Can't hear you. Pat, you have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Is that gonna work?
We can hear you now.
Okay. And I didn't want to jump into the discussion, but I wanted to make sure that before we closed out, that I wanted to say to Adam and also to you, Jen, the Grace United Church so appreciates the leadership, your dedication, and the enthusiasm you have brought to this role. Your hosting today has just been one example of what you bring to the table in terms of moving the Affirm Committee forward towards its goal. And I didn't want to break up the discussion, but I wanted to make sure that you were very much thanked and appreciated for the leadership you have taken.
I'm so proud of him.
Well, if we're going to do thanks, I do want to thank... I do want to thank the people that spoke today, but not only them, but the people behind me that are also on the Affirm Committee with me. They keep me in line and keep me going too. And I appreciate everybody who's here at the meeting today and listening. And we've recorded the meeting, so it's going to be great to get it out to people who had to leave early or couldn't make it to the meeting and are interested as well too to see it. So
Paul's hand was up.
Oh, did somebody, Paul and Beth, did you guys want to talk, or was that just a thumbs up? That was a thumbs up. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak or have a thought, question?
Sure, it's Robert Hargrave at Pine River. My microphone may not be the best. There may be an echo, so just bear with me, okay? it's been a great meeting today, Adam, and so many great ideas on moving forward on what we can do, because it is a journey, not just because you get a yes vote. The beginning is just the end. And so there's a couple of points I just wanted to kind of make. I wrote down here. One was, and we had the same thing, we all come to the table with our own biases and our own prejudice. And I can look at myself, and I had a discussion with my wife Ann the other day, how I've acted in the past, which wasn't very nice, but they're there, or they were there, and it's totally a journey that, and I often said when we were talking at Pine River, I'm not out to change your mind. I'm just here to maybe open up your heart just a small piece so you can maybe change yourself. Because I know what I say and do, it's not going to change your mind, because you've had it for 50, 60, 70 years. And but if they can see that we love one another, and that's what welcoming is all about, inclusion. Having a conversation with those who are maybe a bit on the negative side. You kind of have to know who they are, because you'd likely do, and have a conversation. Have a private, personal conversation with these people, because if you ignore them, they're never going to change. We'd only want them to change a little bit, but just kind of have that conversation. And probability there are people who are a bit on the negative side that know someone in their family who are gay. It's quite possible. So it's just the prejudice, having a conversation, open up your heart, just a small piece, and God loves everyone. It's not just a white colonial president who is going to have to learn, because we all have to learn and grow. And a great meeting today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right. Well, I think that kind of concludes the meeting, unless I'll kind of, I don't know if I should do like a 5 count. Is there anybody else out there that has something they'd like to comment or say?
I need real food now for lunch, not just pie. Mom, what are you eating? Is that a sandwich? I saw that. It's a sandwich. We're going to Mom's for sandwiches. I'm just kidding.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for the participation and the comments and the opinions and the ideas. Like that, it was a very good meeting. I learned a lot as well too. So I appreciate everybody's time and talent and energy and ideas. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And again, we'll have this video available on YouTube so if you know somebody out there that didn't get a chance to be here today, keep an eye on Grace United's website. You can find the link to our YouTube channel from there. And you could pop over in 25 minutes and join Jeffrey's, the Shining Waterways Council if you wanted to as well.
And for a $50 donation to Affirm United, I will have Adam show up in his rainbow outfit and sing "I'm a Little Teapot" on your front lawn.
Hopefully I don't have to spend a whole day doing that, or it's a day where it's warm.
Any weather.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your time, and have a good Sunday and safe drive home.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks a lot, Adam and Jen. It was great.
Thank you.